Thanks to Sana Skin Studio for supporting the No podcast. Sana is a skin studio that is shifting the relationship with your skin and your products through goal-driven facials, real guidance, and clean skincare. Stay tuned for our promo code so you can receive $25 off of your first facial at Sana Skin Studio.
This episode of The No with Nikki Spo is brought to you by Toyota of North Miami.
Welcome to the No podcast with me, Nikki Spo.
What's up, fam? You are listening to The No, where it is not about knowing everything, but about coming to know ourselves. I'm your hostess, Nikki Spolstra, and I'm happy that you're on this journey with me of coming to a place of deep inner knowing, following our birthrights, and doing it with confidence and grace. If you're not already subscribed to The No, go ahead and click that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. Today, we are welcoming back a woman who I feel comfortable enough to call a regular at this point, Dr. Rachna Buxani-Mirpuri, for a conversation about narcissism and how to navigate it. So, guys, this is part 2 of a multi-part series that we are doing, and I'm really honored to have this opportunity to chat with her. Dr. Rachna Buxani-Mirpuri is a licensed mental health counselor. She's based in Florida, and she has over 20 years of experience nationally and internationally. She's worked in government, private practice, and school settings, and she is certified in working with victims of narcissistic abuse as a certified narcissistic abuse treatment clinician. So today we have a lot to talk about. In our previous episode together, we talked about some of the different types of narcissism and narcissism in general. And today we're going to be really focusing on the effects of being in a relationship with a narcissistic person. So let's not go around self-diagnosing people, folks. This is really to get you thinking, to get you to reflect on yourself and the relationships in your lives, which obviously aren't limited to romantic relationships, but friendships, workplace environments, and family relationships as well. So with that, I am excited to welcome back Dr. Rachna Buxani-Mirpuri once again to The No. Dr. Rachna, thank you so much. I'm excited for this part 2 of our conversation of like this loaded topic of narcissism.
Thank you. And again, I do appreciate you actually bringing these topics to light, because I think, like you said, there's a lot of misunderstandings. There's a lot of people struggling, and a lot of people then not reaching out for help because either they're gaslighting themselves. It's an important topic. So again, my deepest gratitude to you.
So let's talk about the gaslighting. Like, I feel like last time when we talked, we had so much to cover, which we still have a lot to cover today. Like, there's a lot. That's why this is a multi-part series, because it is so nuanced, right? And like, there's so many people out there on the internet just like blabbing and talking, and like, it's not really an all-encompassing overview. We're getting like these like tidbits from this person and that person, and we don't even know if they're certified to talk about this. Like, you don't know shit. We know that we are moving away, like as you mentioned to us in last episode, we're moving away from like diagnosing people with a specific disorder, if you will, but more of like where people fall on a spectrum of personality traits, right?
Correct. I was thinking today on touching on 2 different parts. So one is the relationship cycle. How do people even know when they are in a relationship like that? And so, for them to be able to understand these relationship patterns. And then I was thinking of covering a little bit of the fallout. What happens when people have experienced being in a narcissistically abusive relationship, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to start with this story of a client, right? So she wasn't looking to meet anyone. Everyone noticed him, and yet he noticed her. He came in with someone else, and by the end of the evening was with her, and so started a whirlwind of exciting romance.
Sounds so exciting.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how I feel about the other girl who like got the boot, but...
Right. This synopsis kind of covers really a lot of the relationship patterns of narcissism. So then started the fairy tale romance. Okay. Her career flourished. She was doing really well, which caused some tension in the early years of their relationship. And so she tried to help him kind of kickstart his career. He was jealous, so she agreed to get married. Right. So he was jealous about her talking to someone, or even just of her being successful. He devalued her career, and she attributed his invalidation, contempt, and criticism to his own insecurities. His infidelities began, and her career faltered as she became more anxious, helpless, and confused. He then started a new career, which made him far more money than her, And this then foreshadowed even more invalidation and even more contempt. When he was failing, he was invalidating and victimized. When he was successful, he was invalidating and grandiose. That's a little synopsis of how these relationships actually work. So let's start with what happens first. So remember, the first part of it was
he chose me.
And he did everything, right? Because he was flirtatious and I'm promising you the sun and moon. And that phase of that idealization, seduction is called love bombing, right? That's the first phase of a narcissistic relationship cycle where everything is all good, right? And the person on the receiving end ends up feeling desired, you feel valued, you feel chosen, right? Like how she did. And here's the key though, this is where the indoctrination starts. So this is the narcissist planting the seed, right? That I am going to idealize this person. I'm going to give her everything. I'm going to say her because, well, just out of research, they see more men, with grandiose narcissism. So that's kind of this phase. Now, Nikki, it's very complicated because what happens is, you have the dopamine and you have the oxytocin. Everything's working together. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling in love. There's this constant high that you're feeling because this person is really making you feel that, right? The trick to this is to understand that it doesn't have to always be like that. Right? So when we think of the love bombing phase, we really do think of those grand gestures. Oh my gosh, I have the whole room covered with flowers and I have these expensive restaurants that I'm booking. And we think about that as the love bombing phase. The other side of the love bombing is also the fact that if I have a client who's really had a difficult childhood and maybe has not had a sense of financial security, that sense of financial security that somebody else is offering is very enticing.
Of course.
It doesn't have to be the grand gestures. It could just be, oh my gosh, he's so smart. Oh my gosh, or just the protection. I had a client of mine once tell me that she just got so attracted to the way he was protective about her.
Interesting.
Given her past, that was something that was extremely important to her. So, we need to understand this love bombing phase because, again, it comes from something that the victim, of the narcissistic abuse may be lacking in her childhood. And so, it's very attractive. Or it could be these grand gestures. And remember the C's of the narcissist, right? So the charm, the charisma, the confidence, the curiosity, as in like the data mining. I'm going to collect as much information. So they come across as being really curious about you, but really what they're doing is they're collecting as much information so that they can use it against you. Credentials. These people usually have, they've either been to amazing schools, they have accolades that they've won, and comfort, because that's what they offer.
So I'm hearing these things and I'm like, I want all those things in a partner. I'm like, I want someone charming and charismatic and curious and who's like comfort, like I feel safe around them. So it's, when you're talking about love bombing, right? And we hear a lot about this on the internet too and on social media. Like we hear about the love bombing and it's like, well, there's a fine line, isn't there? Like there's somebody being genuine, like and a romantic person. Like how do you know what the difference is?
So I think this next part that I'm going to talk about is actually going to maybe help clarify. And actually, you brought up a very important point, the idea of red flags, right? So when we go in and we tell people, you should be aware of the red flags. The trick is this. We don't know these as red flags. When you look at this, you're right. Who wouldn't want this in a partner? Right? So how is it then the partner's onus to come up, to like, oh, okay, but I need to be vigilant of the red flags? No, because these qualities are actually quite attractive in anyone, right?
Right. That's what I'm hearing. Like when you were saying them, I'm like, yeah, it's attractive. Like obviously it's attractive. Like how do you know if it's legitimate? How do you know if like where it comes into like a toxic place? Where is the line? And I think that people are struggling with that in dating.
Now, the one thing that I think, narcissists tend to do that's a little abnormal is that the extreme idolization.
Okay.
Right? So they, because putting someone on a pedestal, right? You don't want to be on anybody's pedestal because you're going to fall. You don't want to be in a situation where that, okay, but this is rocky. Like why, so when somebody idealizes to an extent where they are actually, putting someone on the pedestal, that might be, again, we're not going to get into red flags because to me, and, to most people in the field who are studying this, it's almost like you are now trying to blame the victim because somehow she should be more prepared. But it's hard to be prepared in situations like that because most of it comes across as very, very enticing and very enticing. We all want this in a relationship, right?
Right.
Couple of things. So one is that, what is it about this, security or comfort that this person is providing and where is it coming from? So maybe doing a little self-reflection on
self-reflection. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Figure out, yes, to figure out why is this so attractive to me? Again, saying this is attractive. So we can't blame the victim over here because nobody is getting into a relationship. Look, it would have been much easier if these people were just not nice people to begin with, but that's not how it's going, right?
So it would be a lot easier if the narcissist was like an asshole from jump.
Thank you.
Right? Like, okay, you're just an asshole.
Yes.
But what you're saying is like that's not the case. Like usually they present as like Prince Charming or Queen Charming or whatever you want to call it.
Absolutely.
They're likable.
And why not, right? So that's enticing not only for a person, but as a society.
Yeah.
We incentivize those things. So why is someone going to run away from someone like that? And that's what makes this tricky. It's not easy to navigate these relationships.
So this is the cycle, right? Like the cycle starts with love bombing.
Yes. The first thing is that seductive idealization or what we call love bombing. Okay. The next phase is one of devaluing. Now, the devaluing phase can start as soon as 6 weeks into the relationship or 6 months. But the victim does not realize this for some time. So remember, we're going to go back to the love bombing, right? So because it's cyclical, when the devaluing phase is going on, which is really where the subjugation of the person starts, right? So that's where now we are exerting control, where we have trauma bondedness. I want to explain this term because forever I've heard my clients say, oh, I'm trauma bonded because two people who have trauma are bonded together.
That's not what it is.
Is the fluctuation with the chaos and the calm in the relationship.
Oh, the relationship itself. Like the trauma is occurring within the relationship and that is the bond. It's not about like, oh, I have this trauma from my childhood and you have this trauma from your childhood. So like no, it's the trauma of the relationship itself. Oh my gosh.
This cycle, the chaos and the calm. Oh my gosh, but they're good days. But see, last week we went out. We had such a good time. You know what? He was so nice. He even took care of the kids and da-da-da-da. And then comes the next phase of the rage. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so confusing. And most of the devaluing phase, Nikki, is spent by the victim trying to get back to that space. It's like, oh my gosh, but it was so good last month or last week. Or, this was so nice. So what can I do? What can I do to get back there? Maybe if I just didn't do this. Maybe if I didn't do that. Maybe if I was just nice. Maybe if I dress up pretty and I sit and I cook a really good meal.
Or maybe if I don't talk. Or maybe I stay silent.
Absolutely. So this is where the devaluing phase has your favorite word, the gaslighting. And we're going to talk about that. So let's talk about what are the elements of the devaluing phase. And we use an acronym called DIMMER, DIMMER. So the D in the DIMMER is dismissiveness. The I is invalidation and the M is minimization. So let's go to the DIM. So what does that look like? Minimizing of concerns, criticizing somebody's accomplishments, and it could be minimization of not only concerns, achievements, health issues. Oh my gosh, here you go again. Really? You have a headache? Okay, yeah, that sort of thing, right? Or like yeah, I know you won this, but that's easy. Anyone can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Really being dismissive, it's being invalidating. Like that's just not important. Oh, whatever you're going through, it's nothing. Come on. You know what? Just stop making such a big deal out of things. That's what you hear. Okay. So that starts the dimmer pattern. This is not like, oh, it happens once a while. No, this is happening day in, day out, every day for years. And eventually it becomes an existential death of the person. Because the person is just not, I don't have a sense of self. I cease to exist because of this constant dim patterns.
We hear the term a lot called negging. I'm like very conscious of this in my life, especially since I've like been dating. I'm like, oh, I catch that. That doesn't feel good, right? Like negging. Do you know like the definition of negging?
I feel like I do, but I would love to hear it from you because this is pop psychology and I love to hear it.
Pop psychology. So to insult or undermine someone in the belief that diminished self-confidence will make them more receptive to the person, right? Like making somebody feel inferior, but for the purpose of having them seek your validation.
Yes. The next M of dimmer is manipulation. What you're calling negging, I'm going to call manipulation.
Yeah, sure. Right.
And here is what manipulation is. And a lot of people get confused about this. So I really want to explain, how do you know a person is in a manipulative relationship? It is a tactic to achieve a desired goal. So if I have a goal that I want to get you to do something, right? I'm going to get you to do it. But in spite of knowing the fact that it may not be in your best interest, it's something I want, and playing on the vulnerabilities of a person.
Right.
So that's where your negging comes in. So what you're doing is you're playing on the vulnerabilities of a person. You're getting them to do exactly what you want to do. In this case, in what you mentioned, it's that I want you to count on me for that validation. I mean, count on me for your existence or sense of self.
Right.
I'm going to do that by playing on your vulnerabilities. And that's exactly what manipulation is. So, there's two ways I can do this. One is by convincing you, this will be great for you to do this, right? All the while knowing it's really not, but I'm going to get you to do this because I want this. Or it is by playing on your vulnerability. So some examples are, oh my gosh, moving to the city would be a great idea for us. You've always wanted to be closer to the parks and the museums. And this is a parent, okay, a narcissistic parent who's saying, that might be my last Mother's Day, but I understand you need to catch your flight today, right? So, something that is not in the best interest of the person, and you're playing on the vulnerabilities, because which child is going to say, yeah, mom, okay, I still have to go, even though it's your last Mother's Day, right? So it's really hitting where it hurts.
I want to share an example because I feel like it's a good one. It's kind of funny. It's kind of wild. And I do this every once in a while, like sharing of personal anecdotes, because I think that they're important for people to know, like I'm a real person and like I experience these things, but like obviously I've been single and I've like had the opportunity to meet some really wonderful people like that, that want to date me or I want to date, I'm interested in finding love in my life and whatever. So I remember I met this one gentleman and he was also recently divorced. Great, right? Also has kids and a little bit older than me. And I remember he said to me, oh, Nikki, it's wild. You're so beautiful. You're so smart. But I really wasn't supposed to be dating a middle-aged mom of 3. I was supposed to be dating the 25-year-old models in Miami. And I remember thinking, I'm not insecure about my age. I'm not insecure that I'm, quote, middle-aged or whatever, middle-aged mom of 3, right? I like how old I am. I like my mind and my this and my like that. I love having my children. But I remember thinking like, oh, are you trying to make me feel insecure that I'm 37 years old and I have 3 children? Like, where the 25-year-old models are. Like, go over there. Cool. And I remember thinking like, I've personally come to a place where I don't let that type of stuff affect me. And I'm like, I can see it for what it is. But I remember thinking like a version of me a long time ago might not have felt that way. Like I might have been like, oh my gosh, no, I need him I need to seek his approval. No, I need to make myself prettier and fitter and like maybe look younger. And, I would have been threatened. Like, but I see it for what it is. And I'm like really, really kind of like alert to the ways in which people try to manipulate somebody into feeling less than so that they need their validation or approval.
Absolutely. And again, you remember we were going back to how do we know? But these are indicators that you're not in a healthy relationship, right?
Right. I'm like, oh, that doesn't make me feel good. Like the person that I want to be with, when I think about when I think about dating, I'm like, my future husband would never. I'm like, I like to say that to myself. I'm like, my future life partner would never say something like that to me, would never want to make me feel insecure, would never want to. Like, and here's the thing, Dr. Rachna, I'm like, okay, your tactic doesn't work on me. And like, it's going to be hard for that person anyway. I think that as like people who might have been through these types of experiences before that are like recovering from finding themselves replicating those relationships, because I think it's important to say, Dr. Rachna, is like a lot of the times it's like what we know, what we grew up in, right? So we will seek out the feeling of that because it's familiar to us. Even you can objectively know that something's not right for you, but it's still like the most comfortable path. Like it's the path of least resistance because you're familiar with it. So as you go in and you grow and people start to recover from having these habits and finding themselves in like over and over again in these relationships, you hear about people always picking, I have bad taste in men, I have bad taste in women. You're like actively choosing to repeat these patterns. So as people go on a journey of like breaking free from that pattern, you can be like, okay, well, that strategy doesn't work on me anymore. And so what happens, at least in my experience, is like, okay, that strategy doesn't work on me. The person doing it is now hitting a wall. And then you find that they're like resorting to like more of those tactics.
Absolutely.
To try to get to you.
Absolutely.
So you have to have resolve and be like, that doesn't work on me, because it's really easy to chip at somebody's ego and chip at their like heart and their soul. And like you said, it's a loss of identity where you start to like say, okay, well, I need to place my identity in this person.
Absolutely. There have been some people who've done research on narcissism and really they call it an identity theft.
Identity theft.
To exist in these relationships, Nikki, you have to give up yourself. There is no way of someone having a self and being a part of these relationships. It cannot coexist. So it's really stealing someone of their identity.
Ugh.
We need to talk about gaslighting, because gaslighting is within the umbrella of manipulation. And listen, this is going to make it clear. This is going to make this process of manipulation even clearer. Okay, so let's talk about what gaslighting is. Oh my gosh, it was so exciting. It was the word of the year.
Yeah, right.
A lot of people understand the first part of gaslighting and they don't understand the second part. So let's talk about the phases. What is the cycle of gaslighting? So the first part is the idea that gaslighting mostly occurs by a person who you trust. A random stranger saying something, you'll think about it, but then you'll move on, right? So there has to be trust in that relationship. The next is the denial of reality of the gaslighted, right? So the gaslighter and the gaslighted. Okay, so what the gaslighter is doing is basically denying the reality of another person, and mainly done through lying, right? So no, that didn't happen. I was not there. I didn't say that. And it's not only denial of reality of experiences, but it's also of instincts, of feelings.
Right.
No, but you just did this. It's a complete denial of another person's self to a certain extent, but really, what they're experiencing as their self.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, what about like people's subjective realities, right? Like you have your experience of how something happened, right? There's two people. You had a set of experiences and I had a set of experiences, right? Both of them can be true. Like the two things can be true at the same time.
Absolutely. Just hold on to that thought. I'm going to answer your question. Okay. And that's where people get confused with the gaslighting, because there's a second part to this. And if that doesn't happen, it's not actually gaslighting.
Okay.
So you're told two people, and sometimes it's just a difference of opinion.
Yeah, sure.
No, I don't like this.
You're allowed to not agree.
Absolutely. Now, where gaslighting gets a little different, Nikki, is the fact that okay, I'm passing by, I saw you, okay, sitting with somebody else. And then the person says, no, you didn't. I was never there. And you're like, no, I saw you. And hold on to that example, because as we go on, I'm going to come back to that example. Okay, so I see my partner in a restaurant with somebody. Okay, that's the
I'm like, heck no.
But then now I confront him saying, hey, I saw you with so-and-so. And he's like, no, you didn't. That never happened. So the third phase or the third step of gaslighting is convincing the other person that they are not well. And that piece of gaslighting is extremely important, because then in that, let's go back to the example of, okay, no, I was not there with anyone. I don't know who you saw. That was not me. Okay. But then I follow it with, and you know what? You're just paranoid. Oh my gosh, you need to get help. This is crazy. You're becoming crazier by the day. So not only have I lied, I have actually now started making a person believe there's something wrong with you. And that piece of gaslighting is very important, because without it, it's actually not gaslight.
Okay, can you explain that? Unpack that a little bit more, because I think that that's really important. I think that a lot of people are being like, well, it's gaslighting. Well, no, maybe it's not. Maybe you're disagreeing.
So let's go back to a little history of this word, right? So for those of you who don't know where this word came from, it was actually a play and then a movie, right? Gaslight.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And Nikki, you have to watch it. It's brilliant. And that's really where the word came from. And I'm going to do a little spoiler, but I promise I will not give you the whole...
I'm so bad. Side note, this has nothing to do with narcissistic abuse or anything that we're talking about on this episode today. But trivia of me is that I will read the Vulture synopsis of TV shows that I'm watching. I will read the synopsis of each episode before I watch it, because I am in such a place in my life that I don't want any surprises. I'm I want to know. So spoil it for us. It's fine with me.
The movie came out in 1944, and basically it was this husband. He was trying to drive the wife slowly crazy there would be a flickering of the gas lights. He would flicker the gas lights, and when she would keep saying, okay, there's something wrong, the lights are flickering, he would say, no, are you kidding
literally,
me?
He would literally flicker the lights, and she'd be like, something's wrong with the lights. And he's like, nah, you're seeing shit.
And Nikki, he drove her slowly crazy with that.
Where you start to question yourself. You're like, maybe that didn't happen.
Absolutely. So, again, I'm not going to go into details, because she actually, Paula, the
main character, yeah,
she did actually recover from it, but it was a third person who intervened. And again, I feel like I've already said too much. I apologize to your listeners, but it's a phenomenal movie. I don't think there's a movie made after that's really depicted gaslighting in a way that it should be. And that's really what it is. It is basically driving a person crazy and not only driving a person crazy, but saying it.
Yeah.
You're telling the person, I feel you're unwell. The fourth phase, which was the cultivating the self-doubt, kind of partners with phase 3, because then it's okay, oh my gosh, you're so paranoid. Okay, so let's go back to our example. You're so paranoid. I feel like I'm living in a prison. I mean, you need to monitor everything. You've got psychological issues. You need to go see a therapist, right? Okay. And then maybe 2 weeks after that, the gaslighted person, she's like, oh my gosh, I heard a sound, it's can you go check? Right. And there is nothing. Okay. And then the gaslighter said, see, I told you, I'm telling you, there's something wrong with you. You are paranoid. You need to get help. I don't know what's going on with you, but you're just losing it. Right. So that aspect of gaslighting, Nikki, is extremely important. Without that, it's a lie.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Because without this part of it, then all you're doing is lying, which is not a good thing. But this is what is the toxic trait. So lying is a denial of reality. Okay? Gaslighting goes on to basically dismantle the target. Without that dismantling of the person, it's not gaslighting.
It's wild because I'm just like listening to this and I'm thinking, how much self-security, self-awareness, self-worth we really need to have just as people. Like something that I've learned over the years is that like I can't control how other people treat me or what they do to me or what they say to me or how they try to make me feel. I can only control my reaction to things and how I respond to those situations. I'm like, it's really hard to gaslight me today. Like, it's hard. Like, you can't do it because I know myself. I know who I am, right? But like when you are in a space of not knowing who you are, especially when you're talking about all these love bombings and the devaluing, the cycle of a narcissistic relationship where like you might start off as this really confident person who has it all together and slowly your self-worth is being chipped away at, right? And that breaks down over time. And now you feel like your self-worth is completely diminished. That person is easy to gaslight.
Absolutely. And here's the dangerous part about this. So after we get that person, so after the gaslighter gets the person to this point of self-doubt, at that point, the roles reverse. So then the gaslighted person almost starts thinking that, it is me.
Like I'm crazy.
So, the victim then becomes the offender because the victim is now thinking, I am the one who's ruining this relationship.
Oh my gosh. All right, guys, let's take a quick break so I can thank our sponsor, Sana Skin Studio, with their OG location in Wynwood and their additional locations in Fort Lauderdale and Coconut Grove. Okay, so the best way I can describe Sana is that it feels like coming home. Unlike traditional facials, Sana's facials are rooted in education, and I love this so much. Every experience I have had at Sana has been a chance for me to learn more about my skin and its needs. I love that the facials are effective while also being accessible enough to be a monthly ritual rather than a yearly splurge. This is why the Sana membership is so great. I'm honored to be able to provide our audience with a promo code. Use the code THENOGLOW for $25 off of your first facial when booking at sanaskinstudio.com and additional incentives if you book a membership. I have absolutely loved my skin healing journey with Sana Skin Studio. Let's take a quick break so I can tell you all about today's presenting sponsor. In case you missed it, I am loving my new Toyota Tundra, which has really opened up a world of possibilities for me and has facilitated so many fun projects at home and is letting me go all the places. When shopping for a new car, Toyota of North Miami has to be at the top of your list. Toyota of North Miami is a Miami-based dealership that offers you a superior selection of new Toyota vehicles, as well as a large inventory of used vehicles and certified pre-owned Toyotas. Toyota of North Miami is conveniently located off of I-95, not far from North Miami Beach, and their storefront has more than 85,000 square feet of shopping space. With so much room, they always have more than 1,000 vehicles in stock at all times, including popular models like the Toyota Camry, Toyota RAV4, Toyota Corolla, and the Toyota Prius. There is a kids room, so you know that made my life easier. And overall, their vehicle experts are kind, informative, and offer superior customer service. Right now, you can lease a new Toyota Corolla for just $79 a month and get free car washes for life. For life. Be sure to check out Toyota of North Miami for all of your car purchasing needs.
Hay que tratar muy bien a los clientes y también ofrecemos free car washes for life.
Free car washes for life? Free car washes for life!
Lease a new Toyota Corolla for just $79 a month and receive free car washes for life.
It's heartbreaking to see this.
Oh my God, I just got emotional thinking about that. Like, it is heartbreaking.
The other thing we also need to understand is gaslighting is the pathologically insecure person who's preying on the conventionally insecure person.
Listen, oh my gosh, wait a second. Wait, say it again. I'm taking notes.
So the pathologically insecure person preying on the conventional insecure person.
What's the difference?
So the conventionally insecure person are people like you and me. We all have our insecurities, right?
Like everybody has insecurities. Like, okay, like we all, whatever.
So all of us are conventionally insecure. Okay, so because we have our moments of insecurity. Now, what the pathologically insecure person does, because This is a power play. Gaslighters, for them, this is a power play. So how am I going to exert power? By attacking the insecurities of the conventionally insecure and capitalizing that to make them feel less than, inferior, and then keep them in that space.
But what is a pathologically insecure person?
So pathology means a person who doesn't have insecurities that are natural or common. This is a person who is disordered insecurity. So a pathologically insecure person is a person who is that insecure that I am ready to harm somebody else for me to feel okay.
Whoa.
I hope I've been able to clear some doubts about gaslighting, what it is.
Yeah.
The power play that comes in to this, right? Quickly, I'm going to finish the dimmers.
Okay, so just a quick recap. We have dismissiveness, which is the D.
Yes.
I is invalidation. M is minimizing.
The other M is
manipulation, right?
E is entitlement. How does this show up in a relationship? We already know, remember from our last talk, that entitled, narcissists are, inherently they feel entitled. How does this show in a relationship? Basically, a person is conveying to their partner, I am more valuable than you are.
Oh my gosh, that triggers me, and I am triggered, and
it's hard because what this does, the sense of entitlement that I am better or I am more important, I am more valuable, is it creates an inequity in the relationship.
100%.
Sometimes it's so funny. I have a client of mine and she believes her husband is narcissistic, okay? And she tells me these stories, that, you know what? My husband, he'll go and I don't know how he does it because, there'll be, the parking lot will be full and, there's no whatever, they're not allowing anybody, but he will somehow charm his way. He'll convince and everybody gives in to him. And she's like, it makes me sick. But why aren't these people seeing it, right? But that's the thing. So entitlement is not only, about, yes, so in a relationship, it is that, I'm better than you, but also, oh my gosh, other people are bending backwards for this person. And it makes the partner almost cringe, but there's nothing that they can do.
Yeah.
R is rage and reactivity. We already know. We spoke about the shame rage cycle. We know that narcissists, when they have those ego injuries, they're going to rage and it's very scary. And this is where the phenomena of walking on eggshells starts, right? I'm going to do everything in the books so that I don't upset this person and so that he does not rage, because that's scary and it's abusive. So that's your dimmer, okay? So that's part of the devaluing phase. So remember, all of these are patterns that occur in the devaluing phase.
Right. The first phase of the cycle is the love bombing.
Then there's devaluing.
Yep.
Third one is the discard. That's when the person is completely like, you're out. It doesn't mean that they're getting out of the relationship. You're still in the relationship, but you are being discarded in the relationship.
Right. Oh, gosh.
Now, here you see those desperate moves like, oh my gosh, let's go to couples therapy. If we are seeing a narcissist, that's when we're seeing them, right? Because the partner is like, no, please, let's go into couples therapy. Let's try to do this. But at this phase, all of those things that we talked about, like the dimmer patterns, the gaslighting, everything is so much worse. And then there's the constant questioning, right? From the part of the victim that, oh my gosh, how did it get so bad? How did I allow this to be? Because they are so confused. And now I'm going to go back and address it. So pedestal, now you're down.
Right.
How did I get off the pedestal? Oh my gosh, how did this happen? It's just so gut-wrenching for the victims. And what they do at this point is, I'm going to try to appease even more. What can I do? What can I do to save this?
The victim adopts that role.
Yes.
And so where does stonewalling fit into this discard?
So stonewalling is a form of a maladaptive communication, right? So stonewalling from the narcissist to the victim is basically like, I have a wall, you can't penetrate, you don't exist. It's a form of communication pattern.
Right, okay.
Right? But what is in a sense happening is that you are being discarded. Now, interestingly enough, like I said to you, that this is not the end. So the final phase of that relationship cycle is what we call hoovering.
Hoovery?
Yes, hoovering. Yeah. So hoovering is the fourth and the final part of the cycle. And what that is an attempt from the narcissist to still keep in control. Because here's what happens at the discard phase. Sometimes the victims get to that point where they're like, okay, I tried everything. I don't know.
I give up.
Or, they will, they're like, okay, this is too painful. I'm going to set up some boundaries. Nope, not allowed. Then the cycle goes into the hovering phase, which is, I'm going to suck you back into this phase, into this relationship, right? What does that look like? The victims feel hopeful. Oh my gosh, maybe there's hope in this. Because you're playing on that confusion, you're playing on the self-doubt. I'm being nice again. Oh my gosh, I'm going to call you. I'm going to find out. Hey, how are you doing? How's work, honey? And you're like, oh, wow. Okay, maybe it isn't that bad. Maybe there's hope here. Maybe this will get back. But that cycle consistently plays out in a narcissistic relationship.
Let's also keep in mind, like, and we mentioned this in the beginning, that like these narcissistic relationships aren't just like romantic partnerships. Like they happen, you see it with parents and kids a lot, like siblings, right? In the workplace.
Yes. And here's the thing, I'm hoping, if we're able to do that about the parents and kids, because, even though there's a relationship cycle there, that relationship cycle looks a little different because parents are not going around love bombing their children.
Are they not though? Like, I think that it's possible, like maybe not in the same way, but I definitely think it's like possible, right? Where you give and spoil and like shower them with attention and affection and love.
Right. Okay. So, some of the family roles and hopefully, like I said, we do one.
Yeah, for sure. Of course.
It's so important about, the golden child and the scapegoat and the invisible child and all of that, and understanding how that impacts a person. But generally, we don't see that idealization of a child from a parent. That first phase, it's not as intense. Look, what makes this difficult is the intensity of these, of these phases, because the love bombing is as intense as the devaluing and the discard. So it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm coming and going. I don't even understand.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this out. Another synopsis. It kind of highlights, and then we'll talk about the major areas that is affected, right? Okay. So let's talk about Claudia. Claudia is very anxious. Little history about Claudia. So Claudia...
Obviously, we're not using people, like we're not talking about real people.
Absolutely.
Right. We're calling her Claudia.
So, but she has still in a marriage, but she has had a very difficult marriage with a person who's been invalidating her, betraying her. Her in-laws are also difficult because they are kind of enabling their son. And her parents don't seem to see either what is happening, right? She comes from, a culture that the gender roles are quite defined. So, he does his part, she does her part. Okay, so she's focusing on the kids and, taking care of the house. And that's kind of her role. Okay, so that's a little background on Claudia. Okay, so now let's see how Claudia is affected by being in a narcissistic relationship.
Because we want to know the effects of what this does to a person.
Yes, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give this little synopsis and then I'm going to briefly outline, all the different areas that are affected. Okay, so Claudia is very anxious. She vacillates between periods of anger, sadness, and regret. She finds that she is often stuck in her head, can't stop wondering what she should be doing differently, and she's constantly deliberating and ruminating. Next time I won't say that. Next time I won't do this, right? She finds herself constantly, maybe I need to try this, maybe I need to do that. If I keep things better, then we'll get along better. That's what she thinks. She ruminates about her husband's comings and goings, the women whose pictures she's seen on social media, and the new women he travels with from work. She's hypervigilant and on edge, and finds herself sometimes distracted as a parent. She's rarely socializing. She doesn't see her friends because she then gets criticized for wasting her time. Her main social contacts other than her parents and in-laws are her sisters. That's it. She's overwhelmed by self-doubt. She blames herself for what is happening in the relationship and asks the therapist, do you think I am bipolar or schizophrenia or something? I think I'm crazy. That's what she says to her therapist. Decision-making is becoming extremely difficult for her. She thinks, I have a gorgeous home, amazing children, and a life of ease. What is wrong with me? I don't even think I'm a good mother anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just a self-saboteur. Her autoimmune systems are getting worse, and even her doctor is stumped because she can't sleep. She's binge eating now because she's turning to food as a source of comfort. And she still wants to figure out, when she comes into therapy, she's trying to figure out, how can I be better? What do I need to do so I don't lose my husband? There's a lot of themes that this synopsis plays out.
So many.
So let's talk about what happens when you're in relationships like that. Now, the reason I told you about the bipolar and schizophrenia, because when people like this come into therapy, it's almost easier for them to think that there's something wrong with them because they're fixable, right? Versus, oh, your partner is narcissistic because then I have no control. And then completely lost this battle. So they much rather believe it's them. All right, let's talk about the fallouts. Cognitive, okay? So remember the cognitive themes that came up over here. So she was, constant rumination, the sense of helplessness, the sense of hopelessness, the powerlessness, rumination and regret, right? Of oh my gosh. And now I'm talking about the fallout, which means that when you're in a narcissistic relationship long enough, or now you've left the narcissistic relationship, right? Like, so it could be either ways. You're still in it, but you're experiencing this, or now you're out of it. But there's regret. There's regret of time loss. I wish things could be different. I wish I had done something differently. All, like, your mind is consumed by that. The ability to focus, like we talked about Claudia, right? Like brain fog.
Yeah.
I'm not able to focus on things. I'm confused. I'm frustrated. The trauma-bonded cycle that keeps them so hooked onto these relationships causes an immense amount of chaos in the mind. So there's obviously cognitive fallouts. Now, there's a concept of the mask off and on, okay, that we see in the narcissist. It's like two people, right? Because there's two different versions of the person, because they can maintain a calm, composed, everything is fine when they are with other people. But when they are in the presence of the victim, that's when the mask is off. That's how we know that these people know what they're doing. Because if they didn't know what they were doing, there's no way that they could keep this mask off and mask on. And that makes, again, a cognitive fallout of that is, but he's so good with, is it me? This must be me, right? So again, the constant rumination. And rumination has a lot of negative health effects that we need to be mindful of, right? So, but they find themselves constantly in this. Guilt is another one big cognitive, fallout. And sometimes I'll have this, like even, a person like Claudia, when she comes in, she's like, I feel so terrible thinking about, in fact, recently I actually was talking to one of my clients and she was talking about her dad. And even just her expressing it, that, we would walk on eggshells when I was younger because, we just didn't know when he would become dysregulated. She had such a difficult time. She's like, but I don't want you to think that he's bad, because he's not. He's really, he's a good father, right? So it's almost that guilt about even
verbalizing
or thinking. So that's cognitive. Then we have, obviously, the emotional or the interpersonal. We have the loneliness and isolation. We understand that. But then we have something that's very important, which is the difficulties in trusting another person. So when you come out of a relationship like that, or when you are in a relationship like that, that's, so dysregulated, you don't know who to trust.
Totally.
And so it's extremely hard for those people then to walk out of there and actually have healthy, trusting relationships. Of course, they eventually do with work and, with eliminating the self-blame, which is a big part of these dynamics. But it's really understanding that piece of, yes, but it makes sense that it'd be difficult for a person to trust somebody else.
Totally.
Perception. Okay. We understand the flashbacks, and we spoke about this again a little bit because, in our previous talk, because so we do see some complex PTSD symptoms in survivors of narcissistic abuse, the hyperarousal, the hypervigilance. So hypervigilance is I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm always on guard. Yeah. But I'm also always on guard about other people's emotions. If a person like does not smile when they look at me, I'm like, okay, did I do something? Are you mad? Are you upset? So
that's so crazy. I'm hearing you say that, and I'm like, oh my God, I've been hypervigilant since I was a kid. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like so aware. I'm so aware. And like, I've personally masked that as like empathy. I'm like, I'm just empathetic, and I'm a feeler. I'm an empath. I can feel what people are feeling.
So when you have that disorganized attachment where you're basically living in fear of the parent, you don't know which, is the parent going to be, are you in a good mood today? Are you not in a good mood?
Yeah.
I need to navigate the emotions of my parent.
Yeah.
Is Dad in a good mood today? Like, can I ask him this? So you see children who almost become like detectives, trying to navigate other people's emotions.
Yeah.
All right. Then we have the fallout of identity, which I think we've spoken about, the loss of identity, the self-doubt, the self-devaluation, self-blame, all of these factors that are, to do with self, right? How do I look at me? How do I understand me? So there's a big fallout of that. In the gaslighting phase, remember, after being gaslighted enough, I start self-gaslighting.
Oh yeah, the self-gaslighting is a real thing.
So that comes as part of the self-devaluation. And the two other things, the emotional, affective, so, depression, suicidal thoughts, grief, anhedonia. I just don't enjoy doing anything. I don't, and apathy sometimes, like I can't feel anything. Tremendous grief that we see in people like that because it's loss. It's loss of self, loss of relationship, all around losses, right? And finally, physical. Because we do see a lot of physical symptomology in like Claudia, where, okay, I'm not sleeping, I'm binge eating, so there's a lot of physical fallout and behavioral fallout that we see finally in people because it's that negative self-talk, right? Or apologizing constantly, or if I do something, do you think that's good? Or like the inability of making decisions. So constantly check, do you think this is okay? Do you think that's fine? So you constantly see those behaviors and then you see those physical fallout. So there's a lot that we see in victims of narcissistic abuse. And that's why I think we as a community, as a society, A, need to understand this, and B, need to support. Because a lot of times, and this is where I think this work gets really interesting for me, is because a lot of times we're blaming the victim saying, okay, but why didn't you just leave?
Right.
They can't leave. The trauma bondedness, there are so many reasons why people stay in relationships like that. So let's not blame the victim. Let's give them the support that they need. Let's give them the understanding.
Dr. Rachna, this has been so insightful. I think that people really need to hear this. I think a lot of people live this way and they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit it to themselves. And one of my questions that I was just thinking about when you were saying this, it's how do we give people the tools? How do we give them the support? Because when you're in it, it's hard to see the forest through the trees, how can people come to a place where they can break free of their experiences that are hurtful to their lives?
Right. So the goal, Nikki, even for us as therapists, is not to get people out of the relationship. Okay? It can't be that.
That's interesting that you're saying that. Yeah.
And people stay in these relationships for several reasons.
There are a lot of things at play. You can't play this game of why people should stay or go or whatever.
I've had clients stay in the relationship because they don't want, because they have kids and they don't want the kids being alone with the narcissist.
Interesting. Right.
Realize that there's something, wrong with the partner, so they can't get out of it. The most important thing is having conversations like that and to lift the blame. If we can get people to understand that this is not a you problem, this is a he, she, they problem, that's when we start seeing growth, right? So it's having awareness, it's building awareness, and it's having these conversations about, okay, look, this is what it looks like. This is what these cycles look like. And it's okay that you want to stay. We just need to work towards lifting self-blame and increasing the sense of self. So empowering this person to have an identity that's separate from that relationship. And that's kind of what we do in therapy. But again, as friends, we can do that. As colleagues, we can do that.
Right.
There's ways that we can empower people in our life because there's so much good in those people, but somewhere these relationships that suck it out of them, going back and saying, hey, you remember you used to do that stuff and you were so good at it. How about we do that? That sort of thing, right? So we're helping them build self, and at the same time, we're helping them through these conversations lift that self-blame.
Well, Dr. Rachna, thank you so much. This is amazing. In the next couple of weeks, we are going to be collecting questions from our audience so that we can have a full-on Q&A session next time. So if you're listening to this, feel free to send me a DM, drop it in the comments about the questions that you have about narcissistic abuse, narcissistic relationships, narcissism in general. Next time Dr. Rachna and I meet, we're going to be answering all of those questions. I can't wait. And I'm so grateful for you all for tuning in, and so grateful for you, Dr. Rachna, for taking the time and sharing all of your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
This podcast was brought to you by Sana Skin Studio. Be sure to use my code, TheNoGlow, for $25 off of your first facial at Sana when booking via sanaskinstudio.com. More than a skin studio, Sana is a movement towards healthier skin and self-love. This episode of The Know with Nikki Spo was brought to you by Toyota of North Miami. Thank you so much for listening to The Know. If you loved this episode, go ahead and share it with a friend. Words are so powerful, and someone may need to hear what we covered today. And if you really loved this episode, please take a moment to rate the show and leave a review. Your comments are so important and valued, and they give other listeners insight on what to expect on The Know. You can connect with me personally via Instagram at Nikki Sap Spo and The Know with Nikki Spo. My hope for you today is that you are fearless in looking inward so that you can be your highest, most authentic self and go after the life of your dreams.